Hi, everybody. I'm very excited. Eternally excited was the words that came into my mind to be here today for a Chalice in the Well interview, filling your sacred chalice from the eternal well within. And I am here with the beautiful Cass Phelps. And he is a somatic movement therapist, a certified Reiki master, sound healing therapist, and lifelong musician. He also creates movement performance works and is known to call on different forms of art therapy, dance, and innovative intelligence of play. His unique approach to sound, breath, movement, and resting stillness unifies the creative and the healing arts together as one. A strong sense of humor and laid back style help Cass to deliver the awakening transmission all is within. And I can tell you that he can deliver that, which is awesome. I'll let you do your marketing. Cass is the creator of the 5 Signals practice, a radical approach to nutrition. The practice allows practitioners to become self-referential through listening to our body's unique biological signals for hunger, pH balance, immunity, optimal physical and emotional health, vitality, and well-being. Cass is also the creator of BioTune, a system of sound frequency medicine, which is also really cool. You should check those out. Recordings designed to bring our nervous system, mind, and body back into balance. That was actually one of the first ways I got to know him. I listened to his BioTune, and I would say don't do that walking at night in the dark because I almost tripped over the road. Do it sitting.
Do it sitting.
Oh man, yeah, we're just gonna go into it. So we're gonna go on a little awesome journey with Cass today. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Also, we should point out that we've included a BioTune as a gift for you all, and it's a download, and there's listening instructions in case you want to read them. Yep.
Read the operating manual before you drive the car. Also, Awake One is your website, so www.awake-1.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Cool. And we're gonna maybe talk a little bit today about yeses and nos. So I'll just preface that I'm in a class with Cass right now, which is amazing, called the Gift Process. And it's phenomenal and everyone should take it. You know, if you get a yes inside that you
either way. Ignore everything and just take it.
Yes, because I always self-reference, and I also self-referenced before I decided to take the class. So just being true to my own process and how I feel it is awesome to be in touch with yourself around that. And that's what we're talking about. So maybe, Cass, how did you get into this self-referential consciousness as a way to, you know, I feel like that's what we're really talking about in terms of drawing inward and filling our own chalice. We have to have that self-referential awareness. How did you get into that? How do you?
Well, I mean, in all honesty, the way that I got into it was that I was so completely codependent that I sacrificed myself so much that I didn't have a choice anymore. And I reached total exhaustion at a very early age and had major trauma. So my nervous system just completely said halt. And I had no other choice but to listen to my internal yeses and nos, my internal system, to gain the trust back with my own body and with my own nervous system. So it started from like really losing choice and realizing that the only way I could get back to choice was to create a really clear container for myself where I only allowed in what felt nourishing. And that created an entire process for me that helped me resolve what was a nervous breakthrough at the age of 29. And I'm 49 now. So grandpa. That was like 20 years ago.
Yeah. Now you're teaching all us grandkids.
Nice rat.
That's right.
Nice rat. Yeah.
I love that you're addressing this trust aspect because I also have childhood trauma, and I feel like that is, and I work with people with trauma. I feel like that is some of the core is that self-trust piece, right? Where we feel it was somehow our fault, that fault was involved, and that thing about choice, which is really more on the trying to get to choice, trying to get out of victim towards choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, how to complete that circle almost of trust through self-referencing. Maybe you can also define what self-referencing means in accordance with trust and how we would do that.
Yeah, such a good. I'm glad that we're just diving right in here with it. So, um, inner authority, self-referencing, is where, for me, where I'm not looking for a definition about myself externally. And so that's square one. So what I'm doing is I'm choosing to feel what inside feels true. And within that, I'm able to define that as a direct experience of my own vitality
Mm,
and my own clarity of being
mm,
versus the role that I would play in the world around doing. Yeah, so it's first just taking back the fact that I know what's best for me and that what is best for me is always going to serve everyone else.
mm,
And that's like the first thing. So what I found in my own body is that as I listen in my own body to what feels like a yes, which is very clearly a opening, expanding, uh, an allowance. Also in the body, it feels like there's receptivity, there's absorption into the moment. Yeah. Versus a no, which for me always feels like a contraction or like a just like a in my gut a feeling of just mm-mm, nope. Yeah. So with that, if I ignore that, then I start to feel anxiety,
mm,
which can lead to fear. Both of those kind of work together, and then from there, my system would start shaking.
mm,
Yeah. So if I'm listening to my yes, and I follow that yes as a flow stream. If I just stay in the like, okay, this is feeling good, navigating the moment and navigating the relationship, then what's happening is my energy is more and more direct. I have more access to my own vitality. And most importantly, my nervous system is neutral and natural. So, natural neutral is really the baseline of understanding what yes, the difference between yes and no is the more that I have listened to my yes or listened to that gut knowing, the more that I find myself in natural neutral. I'm able to sleep deeply. I'm not processing things that have to do with other people. So just reminding everybody that I have like a PhD in codependency,
mhm,
meaning like I was way, way in it. And so I really needed to have that. The severity of that really helped me understand the necessity for that clear yes and no in my own system.
mm.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of that journey, because right, it's a journey, so you're just learning how to self-reference and what yes feels like and what no feels like, and what you're
Hmm.
saying is like it accumulates over time, like they get more distinct,
Hmm.
that knowing
Yeah.
gets more distinct. But how did you let those other pieces go to, draw into that centered place?
Mm. Such a good question. So, give me an example of like let something go specifically. Like what?
Well, like let's say when you first had kind of breakdown.
Hmm.
I was gonna say,
Breakthrough.
yeah,
Yeah.
breakthrough. You had to let go of those pieces, but I'm wondering a lot of times people will stay in kind of like a confused state, where
Hmm.
they're still pieces of other people, energy from other people, energy from
Hmm.
society, all that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
how do you differentiate that and keep staying with this
Mm.
part?
Yeah. Such a good question. So, The first key for me was allowing myself to have pause, non-doing allowing, so that I could actually feel what's mine and what's others. And so that's a process. I mean, that really takes for me, it took a really clear amount of time where I just wasn't engaging with people in a feeling place that just didn't feel right. So that was the first layer. But most importantly, I think it comes down to really defining for you what feels nourishing, to get really clear about, in our bodies and emotionally and just in all of our system, what actually feels nourishing. Yeah. So did I answer your question so far?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I feel like one of the main things was having a practice, a daily practice of having the rest point, the still point, where I can feel the eternal foundation of being. And so that reference is what gives me a clear feedback in my system of who I am. And from there, that stops the external seeking. There's a fulfillment that gets met inside of that. And for me, my practice is always based in breathing and resting and like moving from impulses that feel good, that have pleasure and positive sensation. Yeah. So to build that as a foundation where that is greater than my history of trauma or greater than the other experiences that don't feel nourishing. Yeah, so continual practice of that helps me excavate other people's energies, emotions, all the other things out of my system. So that's like a purification phase, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the discernment and purification phase.
Yeah, great word. Mm-hmm. Discernment.
And was that another reason why you created BioTunes? Was a way for people to tap
Mhm.
into that kind of eternal foundation through that
Yeah.
discernment?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the way that they got created was the I was offering classes, regular classes in the Continuum studio back like literally 20 years ago. And what happened was people would come to the classes and I could see that they needed support outside of the practice and like outside of the classes. And so I would go home and start to create these recordings that I could give to people. And so then gradually people would come back and be like, wow, that was really supportive. That was really helpful. So what they are able to do is create these foundational things that where your nervous system can actually entrain more deeply with nature and that eternal foundation so that you can drop deeper into delta when you sleep, you know, and all of that. And so giving a solid reference point, I think, is one of the most important things. And honestly, like if we could spend hours just creating an infomercial around how important it is to actually have a solid reference in our bodies, and that's what you're really naming with the yes no and the whole thing. Yeah, and I feel like that's really the intention of what you're creating. Yeah.
Yes, the solid reference point.
Hmm.
Hmm. And finding people who have a solid reference point so then you can entrain with them and then reference off of them. I feel like that's often or mostly what you offer is being that solid reference point, for people
Hmm.
to entrain with.
Yeah, it's definitely been the outcome. Like for me, it was never my idea to become a guide or a facilitator or create an entire body of work. That was never my idea cognitively. It was the gift that came out of my own self-healing process and my own empowerment. People just gradually started saying, "Why are you so calm? What is it that you're doing?" And my teacher, Emily, was just like, "Okay, what's going on here?" And then I would go, like, I studied sound healing and I would go and sit with the sound healer guru, Guru Singh or whatever his name was. And he was just like, "Well, you're in a yogic state. How is that happening?" And so I was like, well, I must be doing something right, But then what would happen was gradually the magnetism of that, people started pulling it out of me. But enough about me. What do you think about me?
I don't think I feel. I feel.
Okay, what do
I, I
you?
feel we have a similar self-referencing, and so it'll be easy to get lost in this conversation. When nothing meets nothing, what happens?
Nothing. A lot.
Giggles happen, basically.
Mhm.
Um, and the self, like we're talking about self-referencing, right? Self-authority. In this concept of self, what is self?
Mhm.
What are we actually naming?
Mm. Yeah, that's such a good question. I feel like it's something that each of us are in the discovery process of with. Yeah. Um, for me, my feeling for me is an awareness, my awareness, and this hum and buzz of what feels deeply good and that gives me energy to create with. Yeah. And out of that comes an intelligence that always wants to create more life and always wants to contribute to more life. Yeah. So that's where I nourish from in myself. And from that place I get pretty clear yeses and nos. Yeah.
Yes. I love that you reference this very physically. I feel like you have that transmission as well, like that this hum, right? That there's a heart, touching the kind of heart center, but also this like pulse, and um, this aliveness that it's there, and we feel it. That self isn't kind of a transcendic, yogic, strange word.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's always so many ways that we can experience ourself. There's the formless being, and then there's our spirit, which is what I was just speaking to, that place of us that's inspired and embodied. Yeah. So that's what's beautiful about the exploration for each of us. Yeah. The endless discovery, right?
This feeling of identifying with spirit, or spirit like as part of body, like one with body in a sense, or vibrating body, or
Mm-hmm.
living body.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Is that, I don't know, I don't have a question around that. It just feels nourishment for me,
Mm-hmm.
to feel that coming together, that knitting together.
Yeah. There is coherency and integration in that. Yeah. And within that, there's a feeling of belonging. Like there's a setup of expansion. As soon as you named it, it's like we just both were like, yeah, right there. That's the sweet spot. Yeah. And so, one of the most important things for me as I stop externally referencing, I'm able to recognize myself as infinite and whole, and that my spirit is infinite and whole, and then I'm having a human experience. And so, I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing to embody. And if I stay in my yes, if I flow in my nourishment, then I'm on path and I'm in my body. And within that, I'm in the flow of creation. So then I get to show up like we are and co create and share. And for me, it's really simple like that. Like, I don't have a strategic cell in my body, I cannot strategically think. Other people can, and that's amazing, but I don't. I don't have. That's a very important thing to understand about me. I have no strategic thinking. Like if you tell me to think of a strategy of doing something, I will pine away into exhaustion and never get there. Yeah, so I can only follow my inner authority. Yeah.
feels also ancient in that way. And you like before there was strategizing about whatever.
Hmm.
The Western world is very obsessed with strategy and
Yeah.
strategizing. But
Hmm.
before there was that, like castles and Kauai, so just feeling that land in a sense and like merging into the island and merging into this living consciousness that is like coming through the land and our
Hmm.
bodies and humming us and in a sense with the ocean and the air and just like breathing
Yeah.
through us. There's no thoughts, just
Hmm.
endless like wave of creation.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Hmm. Yeah. Yep. And that's, as far as I can tell, that is our future.
Mm.
Hmm. So it's where the ancient and then the strategic can therefore create something new, that we can learn our lessons through this strategic process that we've been in as we've built a Western culture, a strategic culture. Now we can go deeper into our what you just transmitted and see how we can evolve with everything that we have to be able to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Unwind in a sense, like that we
Hmm.
maybe there was a piece of wanting to build safety, into the
Hmm.
environment or earth and wanting to
Yeah.
build a way to care for our bodies and things like that. And then
Yeah.
the nourishment of unwinding that into becoming one with the earth itself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
Want to lead us into maybe an experience that's all like I feel like we're just going to keep going down this place until we're in that that experience is unfolding.
Yeah. Do we feel ready to do that?
Oh my gosh, maybe no. I had a no when I asked.
Are there any more questions?
I'm going to translate it for everyone. In a way, it's like, how do we somehow, when we're with that self referencing place or someone who transmits self referencing very well, like that they are nourished, like you are nourished in your self referencing.
Hmm.
Um, and then maybe they walk away into a different structure that is not about self referencing or nourishment.
Hmm.
um, how do we keep our finger or keep touching that self-referencing as we go out into structures that have been created by culture that aren't aligned with that?
Yeah, that is that is actually how the gift process developed. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we're doing a 12-week program right now, which both of us are in, and that is literally how it developed. In other words, the gift process, the process of realizing that we all hold something within ourselves that's highly unique, and that we are here to share that. But first, we have to own it for ourselves. So I always say that our gift is for us first. And the thing that people don't realize, that are trapped in our Western culture, is that we all have a gift and that all life does. And everything in nature, I'm looking out my window, has its own specific frequency, its own specific essence. And excuse me. And the way that that essence is shared is through its purity. That's the only way. It's the one law of the ecosystem. And so that's different than culture, which culture says, commodify, fit into the culture. But nature says, know yourself. Yeah. So the gift process comes from nature, and it teaches all of us how to really recognize that we have a gift, receive it for ourselves, then from overflow, be able to share it with others. And that's the sustainable part. to come from overflow. That if we actually are in what we're talking about, these yeses and nos, from that place, we actually become able to know when we enter into a social structure that we have something to give and that it operates through magnetism. Yeah.
People being attracted to the fact that we are actually true to our essence and giving,
Mm-hmm.
self recycling that essence, and they're like, wow, what is that thing that that person is recycling, and can I somehow get in, in
Mm-hmm.
train with that as well, and then that's how that energy works. I feel like we're creating pattern, like nature's all fractals, right? So there's like a
Mm-hmm.
pattern that is repeating itself in this beautiful, design, and then that is creating another pattern off of it. And so just we become that pattern, when we self-generate.
Yeah. And this is the thing that's so amazing about what you're saying is that when we're in ourself, we have our own magnetism, and then we also have our own attraction. That's so pure. That's because we're so in our understanding of what our needs are. That's the process that we're in, is understanding what our needs are and what inspires us. This is all developmental work. This is what we in the future will have in our developmental process more and more in our schools and everything, in the way that we raise our children. When we're in that, we know when we're sitting across from someone our attraction to them, and it's pure because it's based in our own health, our own yes, and our own no. And so that is what's so beautiful, is when, for example, like what's happening between you and I as we are holding this with this group, is that we're following the yes and the no, and we're in the magnetic and electric attraction. And so that's where chemistry lives. And that chemistry is what we're here for. And we're all in for that. I mean, if you want to watch how the world works, just look at how it's done and what it is that everybody's moving through, that attractive, magnetic. Yeah. So, what I'm saying about that is that as we enter into a space where someone's attracted to us, we can feel if we're attracted to them. And the purity of that, yeah, is where it's at.
Yeah, and that piece of when there is a purification of our own yeses and nos, and then we become that, flow in ourselves, and then we can discern our attraction if it's
Mm-hmm.
really in alignment with this health piece of yes and no. And
Mm-hmm.
then we're like, wow, this person has this essence and I need that, right? Because that's what nature needs to create with something else. Like the roots root down in the soil and they're like searching for the different, nutrients that they need, carbon, nitrogen, whatever, because it's in alignment with their yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to sprout a beautiful flower and flourish. um,
Yes. Keep going. Yes.
yeah, so just that, I took it almost into a scientific place, but
Mhm.
that we know that, like, we know we're going to co-create something that is going to produce a really beautiful flower. It's not going to like wither us, like you were talking about code at the beginning of your journey, like being so codependent that it withered your flower in a way, like,
Mhm.
almost in a sense did turn it inward to where you
Mhm.
had to then
Mhm.
recycle your own gift.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We're just trying to help people recycle before they're like, I am so withered, I can barely
Yep.
like move my fingers to get in there in that nourishment.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because I love what you're saying about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. That's, for me, that's such a pure understanding. And with what you're saying, it's to enter into a purity, because when we're self-referencing and we're listening to that inner authority, we are hopefully in the practice resourcing a deeper nourishment than we could ever get in the relational field. And that's how I resolved my codependence. Yeah. So within that, turning inward and being like, I'm either going to figure this out or I'm going to die, because I really got to that point. So that was so beautiful. The gift of that brought me to the purity. So then gradually, as I learned how to go into the relational field, I didn't need people to complete me. All of my distorted desires were washed clean, you know. I didn't need weird sexual stuff. I didn't need weird this, weird that. Like, it could all just be really pure, so that I could show up in the purity and magnetize other people who want that purity and are in that level of work with themselves for that purity. We can pretty much have whatever we magnetize, like whatever's sitting in us, we're going to magnetize it to us. That's a pretty given, basic law. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about, is just having this inner purity, this inner authority that's just so clean and clear that we're not creating more problems for ourselves.
And that's linked to the body. Like a
Mhm.
lot of times, right, when we start on the journey of yes and no's, our minds kind of can co-opt that, right, because we've been trained to use our mind to make decisions for
Mhm.
everything, versus the truth of our body, like you're saying, vitality, that it's a different vibration of yes or no, what your body
Mhm.
is actually telling you to do.
Yeah, it's completely different because it's based in base needs. It's based in like health. Yeah, and so what that does is it takes us out of our conceptual framework. So there's a term that it's called spiritual bypass, and where we'll be like, oh, everything's love and light, and oh, I'm just gonna love this person, and I can accept their trauma, and I can accept the way they're treating me, poorly, because I understand with empathy. That's all spiritual bypass. That has nothing to do with like what's actually happening in my body, which is like, no, 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 this is not feeling right. I'm totally stressed out. Like, in our culture, there's a training where we override that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of savior complex, a lot of different layers to that, complex of what we're trying
Hmm.
to save in ourselves. We're instead, wanting to save it outwardly, right? We're projecting
Hmm.
um, that
Yeah.
that need that we need to meet inside and stuff.
Yeah. And just to say to that, and then we can kind of dive with all this from there, yeah, is that when people come to the gift process, one of the most important things that we work with is that clear container, so that we actually are getting our needs met inside of ourselves, so that we don't try to go and share our gift from a place of like really trying to give what we're looking for. Yeah, again, that's more codependency. And as a trauma person who works with trauma, as a therapist and practitioner, that's one of the main things that people really, as a facilitator, have to check, of like, am I still trying to give what I'm trying to get? Yeah, the savior.
Yeah, I turn down people because I'm like, I'm not quite clear in that place, so I know I can't lead you to that clear place yet.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's still, discernment in itself. Can I hold the container for myself and make sure that I'm clear enough to hold a container for this as well?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Holding that container, right, is going into the dive, like you call it, or like a meditation
Yeah.
awareness. And then you could play giving fabric or texture to the container so you can feel it as a living entity that is inside of you.
Yeah. It just started raining really hard here in the rainforest, so that's what you're hearing. Yeah, so can you still hear me okay?
Yes, okay. I'm glad you said that's what it was. It sounds a little bit like static, but we're making it work.
Yeah, it's the rain. Yeah. So, yeah, so shall we go in? We'll do this for about 20 minutes. Does that work? How much time do we have?
Um, okay. But let's see, we have like 18 minutes until we're scheduled to like in. So it depends on I have spaciousness, depends on your.
Yeah, I'm fine. So what do you prefer, 15 or 20? 20? Okay, good. And you can still hear me okay? Otherwise, I can put a headset on.
Headset, let's see if the headset helps. There is a bit of
Okay.
a
Yeah, I just have to get it. Hold on just a second. Okay, so I'm just going to guide us. And what I want everyone to do is you can close your eyes. What I'd recommend is that you sit or lay down, whatever feels the most effortless and natural for you. Yeah, so just closing your eyes and dropping down into your base, into the backs of your legs, into the palms of your feet. And if you feel called to, you can place your hands on your body. And this can be just in the most relaxed way so that you can just connect with your core. Yeah. And think of this as a passive receptive diving inward so that you're more in the allowing than the doing. So we're going to go into the autonomic system. This is the part of you that's already happening. Let's just take a pause here so you can feel what's happening in your breath. Notice how your breath is already breathing for you. And as you're noticing that, just really allow your breath to guide this moment. Be curious. So if your mind wants something to do right now, give it the job of following the intelligence of your breath. The inhale, the exhale, and that pause between breaths. See if you can feel your heart beating. Maybe it's even beating into the place where your hands are touching. So as you are slowing down, bring in a gentle hum or yum or ah, just to feel your own resonance of your own voice. Hmm. And allow these inhales to happen naturally. If any emotions or material surface, just be in awareness as you breathe with all that's here inside of you. Mm. Pause into this moment of non-doing, allowing. Hmm. Keep giving yourself this natural feedback of your own hum, your own gentle sound of your own voice. This is a great way to start cueing in what a yes, a feels like in your own cellular experience. Mm. Notice how the breath has space in it, how it's non-linear. It can be shallow and then deep. Just keep following that and see if you can notice the moments of space and pause between the inhale and the exhale. Continue to feel your back line. Feel the space of being behind you and also within your back space, your back line. Just having awareness from behind you. Mm. Give yourself permission if you need to move and adjust. Follow impulses that lead to more comfort and ease. Trust your body.
Mm. Breath by breath, the moment unfolds. If you feel in your body any tension or stress or pressure or pain, simply allow it to have a sound so that you can feel a relief as well as the no in your body. Just play with this. And allow your breath to move the energy. Your breath does all the work for you. Just give it the space. So take a few moments with this breath. Pause into it so you can feel the eternal being in the space between the breaths. Just that split moment of space between spaces. Pure awareness in the being. The delicious inhale that comes from that deep space of being, allowing the source of nectar, feeling the earth support you. Allow the earth to rise up and support you. Call forth your deepest nourishment inside of you. Rest into the earth and allow yourself to receive the deepest nourishment within and all around you. Pause into the breath and allow it to breathe you. Relax even more deeply into the allowing of your breath. The planet is spinning, already happening, circling around the sun, already happening. Your heart is beating, your breath is breathing, all connected, already happening. Take this moment and rest into this allowing. The breath is drawing from the deepest source of nourishment. Inspiration. We are going to gradually start shifting our scene here, bringing in some gentle hums and yums to seal in all this goodness, letting your body have some movement, yawns and stretches. total permission here to integrate. Just give yourself plenty of time to let your body move and breathe and expand and whatever else it wants to do in this moment. And I will turn this back over to you now.
I have dyed hair.
It looks perfect.
Oh, wow. Just to everybody who's watching, just to be with yourselves, and I'm going to take this experience as diving into the well of your own being. Letting that being fill your own body, your own sacred chalice with that well that we just dived into. And that's the knitting together of your container and the place where you can be with that. So just being. Thank you for being.
That's my effortless pleasure. Thank you for having.
Thank you all for having.
Yeah, thank you all.